Making the prime rib, rack of lamb, or beef tenderloin at Christmas might seem like a great idea, but the bill that comes at checkout and the stress that comes along with cooking a meat you're not experienced with cooking may not be worth it. I can't tell you the amount of prime rib gone wrong stories that I've heard, and while they may be funny, all I can think of is the $100 plus price tag on that cut of meat that wasn't even cooked right. After looking at fancy Christmas recipes year after year, I've decided that I just don't think it's worth it. Why cook something that you only cook once a year and stress yourself out with a recipe that you don't even know and a very expensive cut of meat? I have decided that easy peasy and inexpensive is the way to go, and you can still create lasting memories doing that. So I put together a list of 15 different recipes for you that are Christmas dinner worthy. They are not super expensive, and they're gonna make things easy breezy for you in the kitchen.
So we're going to get started with some chicken recipes, and this one is Marry Me Chicken, and I figure if it's worth marrying somebody over, it might be worth making on Christmas Day, right? So you want to start off by chopping up 1/3 a cup of sun-dried tomatoes, and this recipe makes enough for 4, so this is 4 boneless, skinless chicken thighs, but if you need to make more, obviously do so, double or triple the recipe if you're going to have a bunch of people over. And then you just want to salt and pepper your chicken and dredge it in flour. Make sure that it gets covered fully front and back. And then in a medium or a large pan over medium heat, you want to put 2 tablespoons of olive oil and melt 2 tablespoons of butter. And if you don't have like one or the other, it's fine if you just do like 4 tablespoons of one. That's going to be fine too. And then you want to put the chicken in the pan and you're going to brown it about 4 to 5 minutes on each side until golden brown and actually cooked through. So really make sure that chicken is cooked through. If it takes a little bit longer, let it do that. And then we're going to transfer it to a plate and set it aside. Then add 2 teaspoons of garlic to your pan and saute for really like less than a minute. And then you're going to add 1 cup of chicken stock, or you could use water and chicken bouillon for this. And then here you just want to deglaze the pan. So I'm just scraping up the little brown bits off the bottom. There's tons of flavor in there, so this is an important part. And then you can add in 1 cup of heavy cream and a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. And you want to turn the heat down to medium-low at this point and allow that sauce to simmer for a few minutes. And once it's simmering, you can add in just a dash of thyme and oregano, dried thyme and dried oregano. Then we're going to add in those sun-dried tomatoes, stir those around, and then add the chicken back to the pan and let that simmer for 3 to 5 more minutes. And what that's going to do is thicken up the sauce by kind of getting some of that flour that was on the chicken kind of back incorporated there. But the key to this is really this really flavorful and amazing sauce once you get those sun-dried tomatoes in there. I served ours over just instant mashed potatoes, like very simple, so you don't have to go do anything crazy. I know that this particular meal, it doesn't take a ton of time really, but it's just, it's labor intensive at the time that you're going to make it, right? It's not a make ahead. We'll have plenty more make ahead meals coming up, so stay tuned.
So speaking of inexpensive and low stress, I want to talk a little bit about Temu, the sponsor of today's video. Temu has a super easy to use app with site-wide savings up to 90% instantly. And they offer you free shipping and free returns for up to 90 days. Obviously, as a home cook, I'm always looking for new kitchen gear. So I was able to recently get myself one of these over the pot strainers, which I've wanted forever for a really inexpensive price, to make pasta night easier in my house. The no touch, just pour it in there, keep everything in one pot. I love it. I also got this bag sealer, and you know how I hate wasting food. So this is able to keep anything that I'm keeping in a bag fresh and resealed after I use it. I can't tell you how many times my kids have opened a bag of chips, left them open, and then they're stale and not good the next day. So now we have this fun little bag sealer that they're excited about using, and we don't have to worry about it. And Temu isn't just for kitchen items. Some other items I like to purchase are seasonal items, such as these beautiful snowflakes for my Christmas decor and this soft blanket. I love to buy a few new things every Christmas, and Temu has some really cute items. I've also bought many blankets from Temu in the past, and they are always so soft and durable. My kids love these ones. I also love to use Temu to purchase gifts like this busy board for my 2-year-old, because he always kind of needs something to do, and this LCD writing screen. There's no mess, like no markers or anything, and I know my bigger kids are going to end up using this too. Temu is for the frugal techie too, and to be honest, I don't have an Apple Watch because I don't like the price tag on it for what you get. But Temu has this really cute knockoff, so I'm gonna give it a try. I did just receive it, so I haven't set it up yet, but I'm excited for it. With Temu, I can make these purchases without sacrificing on other things. I really like to save for experiences with my family and vacations, and so when I use Temu, I don't have to spend a lot on other things so that I can keep saving up for those big events. So to start spending less, you can download the Temu app through the link in my description box for a smoother shopping experience. And all of the items that I've mentioned in this video are also linked down in the description box so that you can go right to them and check them out if you're interested. Now, I am super excited to share more inexpensive dinners to go along with your inexpensive shopping.
This next one is a cranberry balsamic chicken, and it is really quite delicious. And I served it with some roasted asparagus. I'm just going to get started by marinating my chicken. I'm going to be using 6 boneless, skinless chicken thighs that I had pulled out of my freezer the night before. And then I'm adding a 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of honey, but I might have put a little more in here because you really can't have too much honey, right? And a sprinkle of black pepper. And then you want to mix everything together really well. If you wanted to, you could absolutely make this marinade in a bowl and then pour it over the chicken. This just happens to be my method. And after doing it, I was like, I should have put it in a bowl, but that's okay. And then I'm going to marinate it in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. And you could actually do this for overnight if you wanted to too. And I was probably gone for a little bit longer than 30 minutes because we took this opportunity to head out to a light show down the street in the town near us. And I'm going to post their YouTube down below for you guys because it is a really cool thing. It's one of those shows where they do the lights to the music and they do it all for charity, and just awesome to check out, especially if you're in the New England area. Go ahead and drive over there. So I will make sure to post all the details down below for you. So I'm just going to cover this in plastic wrap, put it in the fridge, and head out to that light show. Now, unfortunately, I can't play the music for copyright reasons, but here's a little clip of what I had posted on my Instagram. So when I got back, I got started on the rest of the dinner. So we're just going to slice up 1 whole red onion and place that on a sheet pan with a couple tablespoons of olive oil. Now you want to add your chicken and just kind of nestle it in right over and in between those red onions. I will tell you that these red onions cook up so amazing. Like, they are soft, they are sweet. It is an incredible flavor, especially with this balsamic marinade. And then make sure that the balsamic marinade, you really get all of it onto that pan. You really want all of that to cook on those onions and on that chicken. So just go ahead and pour it on after you put your chicken onto the pan. I'm also making sure to kind of flatten out my chicken thighs as much as possible. This will help them to cook evenly and make sure that I don't have to keep it in the oven for too long a period of time, because if I have to keep it in there longer, my chicken may become dry. And I will tell you that if you put this in for the right amount of time, it will not be dry at all. It will be incredibly juicy. So now I'm adding, the recipe says, a 1/2 cup of fresh or frozen cranberries. I had some frozen ones left over from Thanksgiving that I had just popped in the freezer. If you didn't know you can do that, you absolutely can. And then I'm just kind of pouring them around. I'm not sure if I got a 1/2 cup or maybe a full cup, but that amount just looked perfect, and honestly it tasted perfect. And then I'm just putting some sprigs of tarragon onto my chicken, and I just love the colors in this dish. You have the red and the green, and that's why I just think it is such a fabulous holiday meal, and it is so amazing. So you want to put this in the oven at 425 degrees for about 25 minutes. And during that time, I'm going to be making my couscous. So I have this roasted garlic and olive oil. I think that this couscous, some mashed potatoes, potentially some polenta, roasted potatoes, rice. Any side would go really, really well with this because there's a lot of juice and sauce, and I really want some sort of carb to kind of soak that up. But you know, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe cauliflower rice would be good too if you're trying to go lower carb. So I'm just following the instructions on the package and bringing 1 1/4 cups of water, the seasoning pack, and a tablespoon of olive oil to a boil. And then I'm just going to pour my couscous packet into the pot and cover for 5 minutes. During that time, I'm going to get my asparagus started. So my chicken is in the oven, and it has been for a few minutes, probably about 5 minutes. And I figure let's get the asparagus ready so that I can put the asparagus in the oven for the last 10 minutes of cooking. So I'm just chopping the ends off there. I really don't like those crispy ends of the asparagus. I know some people eat them. It's totally fine. Go ahead and leave them on if you like them. And then I'm drizzling on about 2 teaspoons of olive oil. This is kind of your taste, how much olive oil you want to have on here, and also sprinkling on some Diamond Crystal kosher salt as well as a little bit of pepper. And then I'm popping this in the oven for 10 minutes. So basically when you have 10 minutes left on your chicken, go ahead and pop that asparagus into the oven. And then I'm slicing up 1 lemon and putting aside some garlic powder. At this point, my couscous has done, and I'm just fluffing it up with a fork, and you can see it looks delicious. I really, really enjoyed the couscous with the chicken this night, and that garlic flavor is so good too. And you can get those couscous packages on sale for $1 sometimes, so definitely watch out for those. So I'm just going to squeeze a half of a lemon onto my asparagus, and go ahead and use the other half of the lemon if you're a huge lemon fan. I like a little bit of flavor, but I'm not too crazy about it. And then I'm sprinkling about a teaspoon of garlic powder. The recipe I used did call for fresh garlic, but I just felt that would be a little bit strong, so I just wanted that simple garlic flavor on the asparagus. And then I'm going to sprinkle on some Parmesan cheese. I have this huge container of Parmesan cheese from BJ's, but you can use whatever type of parm that you like. Or if you're trying to go vegan with these asparagus, you can definitely use nutritional yeast. I think that would be quite good. So I'm just going to mix everything around here, and out comes my chicken. This chicken is so incredible. The flavor is amazing, and I really love that there is just not too much sugar in it. That balsamic flavor is so savory. The tarragon gives it this, it's almost like a light licorice flavor, but I don't even like licorice, so I hesitate to say that, but it was so good. The cranberries are absolutely fabulous, and this asparagus, it is so simple and so amazing. This meal, aside from the marinade, cooks in 30 minutes or less. Once you get started with everything in the oven, it just moves along. So it's just such an amazing meal to make in such a quick period of time. My husband and I could not stop talking about it. And this particular night, my kids had eaten sandwiches ahead of time, but we just absolutely loved this. And I do have some for lunch today, and that's pretty much all I'm thinking about, especially as I watch this video. So I really hope that you're able to make this for your family and that this was a helpful recipe for you. The next one I'm sharing is French onion chicken, and I actually made this for a $20 date night the first time I shared it, but I think this would also be wonderful for your Christmas dinner. So you just want to start by slicing in half and then slicing 2 to 3 onions. I think you only need 2, but I ended up cooking 3 because we're going to caramelize those onions.
Okay, so you definitely don't need to buy all 3 onions because, I mean, I know these will cook down, but I still think it's more than you would need. And this recipe says to add a little balsamic vinegar, which I do happen to have on hand. So I'm going to do that, and a little bit of salt, but you don't have to. I, for years, have made caramelized onions without balsamic vinegar. So, and they're delicious, but I figured since I have it on hand, let's give it a shot. But like I said, you don't have to. So if I didn't get that, I ate up my potatoes. I had 2 potatoes. I put olive oil on them, salt, pepper, rosemary, and garlic powder. And then I'm just putting them on a baking sheet with some parchment paper. And I was just saying that if you have Parmesan, you could also put Parmesan cheese on that. That would be delicious as well. And I'm gonna try and put them like side down here because that's going to make one of the sides really crispy. I'm trying to kind of cook these a little bit larger because I'm going on the idea that they're similar to, you know, if you had like the little baby potatoes, those are more expensive, but you can cut them in half and then cook them like this. So we're just going to do the quarters and cook them like this. Or they're the eighths and cook them like this. Okay, one other thing we need to do to kind of prep for dinner is slice up this bacon. You can do it whenever, but I feel like now is a good time while my onions are still caramelizing. And we're just gonna slice this up into little pieces. And we're gonna do a bacon fried green bean. Oh my goodness. I've made these before when I did cooking with canned green beans, but I thought this is another really good one to add. And it really feels special when you cook, obviously, with this much bacon. Again, if this is like for two, like maybe that's a lot of bacon for two. I don't know. It depends on how much you like bacon. So we'll push this off to the side. Now, I'm going to use a flour dredge when I make the chicken. So I'm going to make that right now. You need about a half a cup. I'm just going to eyeball it. If you don't have flour on hand, not a big deal. It's not really going to be the end of the world if you don't use it. But I feel like it's a pantry staple, so I'm going to use it. For the dredge, we're just going to use paprika. Just a little bit of it. Pepper, however you like it, and about a teaspoon of salt. Give it a good mix, and this is going to be all set for when we do our chicken. We are really getting somewhere on the onions right now. The key to a good caramelized onions is to be able to cook them down until they're soft, the natural sugars come out, and they're not burnt. So they're getting brown, but they're not having like crispy edges or anything like that. And I blame myself because when my husband and I first started dating, I didn't know this. And I would think it would, I'm like, why is it taking so long? I would turn the heat up. Not a good idea. And ended up with burnt caramelized onions almost every time. And I was like, no, this is good. This is how they're supposed to be cooked. And I was wrong. And he doesn't like them now. And I think it's because I ruined them for him. So, my fault. So I think these are pretty much done. I'm just going to move these over to a separate plate. And we're just going to use this same pan to make probably the green beans. It's just a little too small to make the chicken in. Okay, we're going to get this bacon going. One-handed. There we go. In the pan, and then we're gonna add green beans in a little bit, and we'll get our chicken dredged in the meantime. I've dredged the chicken. I have a half a cup of chicken broth here. I didn't buy chicken bouillon, but you can for less than $1. So I kind of look at chicken bouillon as part of my spice cabinet, but if you don't have it, that's okay because you can still get it within the budget for, like I said, less than $1. I happen to have some just in my fridge, so I just use that. We're gonna add a tablespoon of the flour mixture right to here. And in a little bit, once our chicken is cooked, we're gonna pour that into our pan.
So for the chicken, I'm cooking it in the bacon fat for about 3 to 5 minutes on each side. And then once your bacon is cooked up to your liking, you can add in your green beans, and you can actually add your favorite seasoned salt too. So however you want to do it. I actually felt like I added my green beans a little bit early. You do want to drain them too, because I wanted my bacon to get a little bit crispier before my green beans got cooked down, but it was fine. It was still really delicious because it's green beans and bacon. And so you want to remove your chicken from the heat once it's cooked through, and then add in that chicken broth, and you're just going to let that cook for about a minute until it thickens, and then you can add the chicken right back to that stock and that thickened sauce mixture. The flavor on this is fantastic. And then once you add that in, you can actually top it with the caramelized onions and just a sprinkle of mozzarella cheese on each one. And it's kind of your choice how many onions you want to put on. I kind of want a little heavy-handed, I'll admit, on it. Next time if I were to do it, I would put a little less onions. And then you just want to cover it up and let it cook on low for 3 to 5 minutes until that cheese is melted and bubbly. And oh my goodness, this was so delicious. So our potatoes were done, and the green beans were done, and the chicken. Put everything on the table. And because I did originally serve this at Valentine's Day, I had a Valentine's Day napkins, but I would recommend some beautiful Christmas napkins, or I always recommend, putting out your finest china to make things feel special, even if you're not spending a lot of money. This was absolutely delicious, and I know it will be fantastic on your Christmas table. Next up is kind of my budget holiday meal in the crock pot, and that is going to be a coq au vin. And it really just means chicken with wine. In a medium saucepan over high heat, you want to add 1 bottle of Pinot Noir, and you're going to boil this for 15 minutes until it's reduced to about half. You do not have to get an expensive wine here. You can do this for very cheap if you need to and want to. Just find something on sale and go for it. If you are totally against using wine, can't for whatever reason, I would use beef broth, I believe. That's going to be my alternative. Then you see in the bottom of my Instant Pot, you can use a pan on the stove for this, or if you want to use the Instant Pot, you can actually cook things, and then we're going to use the slow cooker function. So your choice on how you want to do it. I put about 8 ounces of thick sliced diced bacon in the bottom of that, and we're going to cook that up. And while we do that, I'm just cutting up some vegetables. I have a really large shallot. The recipe actually calls for 3 quartered, but I just did my best with what I had because it was just so large. And then you're also going to need about 1 pound of those baby bella or cremini mushrooms. My last video when I talked about mushrooms and how you just need to kind of brush the dirt off, there were some people that mentioned Alton Brown and how he had done an experiment where he washed them in water, because I said that they take on too much moisture if you do that. And he said that there was actually no weight difference. So super interesting. When I did this, I was still, under the impression that you didn't want to wash them because you didn't want to add too much moisture. So I did just kind of wipe off the mushrooms. Obviously, you do whatever you like to do or whoever you trust. My thing was off Bon Appetit. Then Alton Brown says something different. It's just such classic cooking instructions or life. It's like everyone does something differently, and that is okay. Then you just want to slice your mushrooms in half. You just want to cook that bacon up until it is crisp. And my wine was boiling too, so to let that go for about 15 minutes. Then I'm going to season my chicken. You can use just salt and pepper. You can use your favorite seasoning. I'm just using the Trader Joe's everyday seasoning. If I had Auntie Nono's, I probably would have used that too, but I ran out because I used so much of it. I did get more since then. And this is why this is a budget meal, because we are using some things like mushrooms, wine, but we're going to use chicken thighs. And that's probably like the cheapest thing that you could serve for Christmas dinner. And I love them in this. They really do taste elevated, fancy. They are absolutely delicious. My husband was raving about it when he's like, this is really, really good, huh? And I know a lot of times I say he's raving. It's funny because sometimes he says it's okay, and the kids are more about it. But in this case, he thought it was really good, and so did I. So when your bacon is crisp, you want to remove that from your pan. And then I'm just adding the chicken in skin side down, and we're going to brown it for 4 to 6 minutes on each side. In the meantime, I'm going to peel some carrots. I have 5 carrots here, and I'm going to cut them into 1-inch chunks. And then when your chicken is done, you just want to remove that from the pan. So you've got your bacon set aside and your chicken set aside. And then you do also need about 1/2 pound of pearl onions, but I couldn't find those. So I had these boiling onions and I just peeled them. And I also minced 3 cloves of garlic. Now, I should have just put this in the bottom of the Instant Pot, but I got kind of messed up on what I was doing when. You want to cook your mushrooms and your shallot over medium-high heat for 6 minutes, stirring in the middle. And ideally, you just want to do this in the same pan that you did the chicken and the bacon in. I got a little mixed up. But once that's done, all the cooking outside of the slow cooker is done. All the chopping is done. And we can just add everything to your slow cooker. So you want to add in 2 cups of chicken broth. If you are using your Instant Pot, you do want to make sure that you get all the brown bits off the bottom. You don't want those to burn to the bottom of the pan. Then you want to add back in your chicken, bacon, onions, carrots, garlic, mushrooms, and shallots. To that, add 3 tablespoons of tomato paste, your red wine, 2 bay leaves, 2 teaspoons of dried thyme, and a sprinkle of salt. Then you want to cook on low for 7 hours. Then to thicken your sauce, you want to mix 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter with 2 tablespoons of flour. I found this a little difficult, and if I were to redo it again, I probably would just use a slurry. So that would be like 1 tablespoon of water and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And you want to mix that right in with your chicken mixture. and then you're going to cook it for an additional hour until it's nice and thick. And it didn't really turn out too thick. I never find that with the crock pot it really does, but it definitely helped to kind of make the sauce a little less watery. And it didn't really matter because the flavor was all there. This was so delicious. So definitely a little bit of work, but worth it for a nice, delicious holiday meal for less. I felt like, you know, you're not spending the big money on the prime rib and you're not buying short ribs or anything like that. This is just chicken thighs, but it's so special and so amazing. Did kind of make like a nice little holiday dinner here. I served ours with some scalloped potatoes that are also cooked in the slow cooker, so I'm going to show you those next actually. And air fried butternut squash, which I will put the link for my video where I did that down in the description box. This next one is my favorite recipe for chicken marsala, which I think is totally worthy of Christmas dinner in a crowd. And it's so easy that I actually made it on a pantry challenge in this video. So if I'm mentioning my pantry items, that is why. I have an amazing recipe I love to use for chicken marsala, and it's on bettycrocker.com. So I will post that below for you as well. All the recipes that I do have, I will make sure that they are down below in the description box. So I am just cutting up what I have is a very large chicken breast. So this is going to be enough for us for dinner. And then I'm going to actually add like one little piece so that Dan can have some chicken marsala for lunch tomorrow as well. So I'm just cutting it in half, and then I'm going to actually pound it out with a meat mallet. Make sure you put the saran wrap over the top there to make sure that the chicken doesn't splatter everywhere, because it, as much as you think it might not, it will. It will go everywhere. I've tried not to before, but you gotta use the saran wrap. And then I'm just like cutting this in half because for us, one of these pieces is perfect for Dan, one of these half pieces is perfect for me, and then the kids will actually share like a smaller piece. But you know, you need more chicken, you have a bigger family, go ahead and do that. So I'm just taking my chicken and I am dredging it in some flour. It's that simple. Now take a couple tablespoons of olive oil and heat that in a medium pan over medium-high heat. And then to that, I'm just going to add in 2 cloves of finely chopped garlic, or I'm going to use a garlic press in this case, and 1 cup of fresh sliced mushrooms. I have baby bella mushrooms. I've used like regular white button mushrooms. Those work as well. It's kind of whatever you have. And I think like mushrooms you can buy dried too and then rehydrate them, which is a great thing to keep it in your pantry. So I'm just going to cook these up. The recipe also says to add in a 1/4 cup of fresh chopped parsley at this point, or you can use 1 tablespoon of parsley flakes, which is what I had. So I want to cook this for 5 minutes. And you want to add your chicken to the skillet and cook for about 8 minutes, turning once until brown on each side. Then you want to add a 1/2 cup of dry Marsala wine, which I did happen to have on hand, but the reason that I absolutely love this recipe and I feel like it's good for any time is that you can actually substitute chicken broth for this. So if you have chicken bouillon, that is all you need to add. Cook for 8 to 10 minutes until the chicken is fully cooked through and no longer pink in the center. And then you can see I'm adding just like a little bit of the pasta water to kind of bind the flavors. And then I'm going to add in some fresh cooked spaghetti. I was just cooking this on the side the whole time. I forgot to mention that earlier. And cooking that in there for just a few minutes. I had cooked it to al dente, and I really like that because it really coats the noodles and gives them some flavor too. But I can definitely attest to making this with chicken broth in the past and knowing that it really tastes as good, if not better, with chicken broth versus Marsala wine. So if for some reason you don't have that, because it's, you know, it costs money just to buy Marsala wine for like one recipe, and I really have never seen another recipe that needed Marsala wine. So you don't need to buy it. It still tastes amazing with the chicken broth. So I'm just mixing everything really well together here, and this is what we had for dinner that night. Everybody loved it. Like, kids were a big fan. This is the first time that I've made this, I think, for the kids. Like, I haven't made it in a while, and I was really craving it, so I was happy that I had those mushrooms on hand and that this was what I was able to cook up.
Now I'm going to share my favorite Christmas meal with you, and this is Mississippi pot roast. You're going to need 1 chuck steak, 1 stick of butter, a packet of ranch seasoning, a packet of onion soup mix, and pepperoncinis. So this is so good, and it's so easy. It's one of those recipes that actually is dump and go. I don't know if you're like me, but I get a little frustrated when people say things are dump and go, that you know, you have to cook this on the stove first and whatnot. No, you put this one in the pot, you put the stuff on top, and that is that. So it makes your Christmas day so easy, and it is so flavorful and mouth-watering. I am so excited to share. And just to clarify, you do need about 8 pepperoncinis with no juice, and then we're going to cook on low heat for 8 hours. And this is what it looks like when it is done. You can see an amazing mouth-watering roast. When I served this, I put it on a large white platter so that we could just slice it up on the table, and I served it with an Instant Pot red bliss mashed potato and some Parmesan green beans. This entire meal is Christmas worthy for sure. So I will make sure to link all of these recipes below for you.
Next up, we're making a delicious roast beef and gravy.
We're gonna get started with this roast beef and gravy from our cookbook. Super simple. We're looking at only 4 ingredients, so I'm really excited about it. So I snagged this chuck roast on sale, manager special. So it's quite a deal for the amount that we're getting here. And we're just gonna mix everything together. So just got a bowl here. We're gonna use 2 cans of condensed mushroom soup. You want these to be undiluted. What I'm hoping is gonna happen here is that we're gonna get like a really nice thick gravy, which sounds really enjoyable to me right now. 1 package of onion soup mix. This is actually just the Aldi brand, so it's a little bit cheaper than the Lipton, but I haven't really been able to tell the difference. And then you can use cooking sherry or beef broth. I happen to have sherry on hand, so I'm just gonna use it just because I don't use it that often, and I'd rather use up something that's older. I do have beef broth, but I wanna save that since it's newer. Kind of using the first in, first out method, I guess. So just use your oldest items first. It's a little lumpy, but that's gonna be okay. It's definitely not gonna stay like that. I can smell it already. It has a lot of flavor, and I think that's gonna be really important because we're seasoning this entire chuck roast, and it's not small. My chuck roast is about 3 pounds, which is perfect because that's what the recipe recommends. And I think most of the ones that you're gonna buy are gonna be that size. So I'm just gonna set this for 8 hours, and we're gonna come back to it and see what it does. 8 hours on low.
This was done at right about 8 hours, and it was absolutely perfect. I actually waited a little bit until my husband got home from work to serve it, so it's not quite steaming hot when I'm breaking it up. But once I move everything around and get to the middle of that delicious chuck roast, it falls right apart with 2 forks. My favorite thing about this, I mean, besides the perfectly cooked meat, is this amazing gravy. It is as good as I thought it would be. I'm so pleased with it. This is definitely something to make if you love the Mississippi roast, but want to try something new, or maybe you just don't have what's on hand, to make that, and you have these things instead. This is definitely up there with that, and it's something that is 100% craveable.
This next one is $1 Million Spaghetti, and this is really the start of me showing some casseroles that you can either make on day of or make ahead. For this one, I started by browning up some chicken sausage, but you could also use ground beef.
To go along with this, you just want to cook up a package of spaghetti to al dente. I'm gonna cook this with about an onion. I only have like half, but that'll do. You also want to add in about 2 cloves of minced, or I just grated in some garlic. Then you want to add in 24 ounces of tomato sauce.
Then just make sure that that is well mixed and set it aside. You can turn the heat off on the oven.
So for our like cheesy mixture, we're using a 1/4 cup of sour cream, 8 ounces of softened cream cheese, and about a cup of cottage cheese. You can also use ricotta here if you have it, but I have cottage, so it's perfect. So I almost forgot, you're supposed to put about a 1/2 cup of pasta sauce into the spaghetti. Luckily, I had some left in my fridge from last week. Just about the perfect amount. But usually you should reserve some of that original container. I'm gonna give that a good stir. You want to put about half the noodles in the bottom of a 13x9. My package of pasta was like a, I don't know, gluten-free, blah, blah, blah. And because of that, I ended up having like less because it's not like a full pound, but I'm not worried about that. I'm here for the meat and the cheese. So then you just want to put your cheesy layer
Top that with the rest of your spaghetti. And now we're just gonna put our meat sauce over the top. I'm just gonna cover this up and put it in the refrigerator because it's 8:05 a.m. right now. So it is too early to eat. But when I am ready to put it in the oven, I will take it out about a half hour before I'm ready to cook. I'm gonna sprinkle a bunch of mozzarella cheese over the top of it. Probably just like whatever I have left. I don't have that much left in the bag that's open. And cook her up.
This is always a fan favorite. It's something that gets requested by my friend group when there's like a potluck and they've taken the recipe from me and served it to their families time and time again. It's just such a winner. My mother-in-law makes it too, so it is all around delicious. My family loves it. Every time I make it, it's always a huge win.
This next one is a shepherd's pie. I will tell you that this is like the best shepherd's pie recipe that I have ever tried. So I took 1.5 onions. I'm trying to get to about a cup of chopped yellow onion, but you really can't go, too crazy with this. Like, have as much as you want. It's delicious. Then you want to peel 1.5 to 2 pounds of russet potatoes. I have 2 rather large ones right here that I am just peeling up, and then I am going to dice them, and those are going to be for the mashed potatoes on top of the shepherd's pie. Now, you do not have to use potatoes if you don't have them. Potatoes are a great budget item. They are relatively inexpensive. I can usually find 5 or 10 pounds for $2 to $5, and they go so well with almost every meal. But if you don't have them or you don't have the time or whatnot, it is super easy to just buy the potato flakes. Those are also extremely inexpensive, and they still taste great on a shepherd's pie. So I'm just gonna cook my onions up over medium-high heat with some oil. You can choose the oil of your choice. It's not gonna make a huge difference as far as the meal goes. You just wanna cook the onions for about 5 minutes, stirring occasionally. Then you wanna add in your pound of ground beef, or you could use ground lamb, or you could use ground turkey. Now, turkey can be a cheaper alternative, especially like I was talking about those tubes of turkey, and I find that especially in shepherd's pie, it is extremely cost effective and delicious tasting, like not a problem at all as far as a swap goes. I have also used lentils in a shepherd's pie, and I will post the video down below where I do use a lentil as an alternative in a shepherd's pie. It's an extreme grocery budget challenge, and it can save you big bucks. Not my absolute favorite way to make it, but it is good, especially if you like lentils. It is a great alternative. I was able to buy some ground beef on sale for, I believe, a $2.49 a pound and put it in the freezer. So that is the ground beef that I am using in this video. And then to your ground beef, you want to add in 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme leaves, 2 teaspoons of dried parsley flakes, 1 teaspoon of dried rosemary, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground pepper. Let the meat and the spices cook for about 6 to 8 minutes until the meat is fully browned, and make sure to stir that occasionally. You can see that I'm mashing mine up with this fun little meat masher. I will put a link to this down below, but I've also heard that they have them at the Dollar Tree. So I haven't seen them myself, but that is quite a good deal if they do have one. To my cooked meat, I am adding a little bit of this Mushroom Company umami from Trader Joe's just because I thought it would taste really good in this, and it did. So just an option if you have like an extra spice that you like to add, go ahead and add that. And then once it's cooked, we're adding 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce and 2 cloves of garlic. I'm going to stir to combine and cook for about a minute. To the mixture, you want to add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour and 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. Now, as I mentioned before with garlic, go ahead and use garlic powder if that's all that you have. You don't have to add fresh garlic. It'll still taste delicious. Now, tomato paste is very inexpensive and a great thing to have on hand as far as budget meals go. It can add a lot of depth of flavor to meals that you make without adding a lot of extra cost. If you open a can of tomato paste and you're like, I'm not going to use the rest of this, you should throw that into a small plastic bag and put it in the freezer. It freezes really well, and you can just take the frozen tomato paste and put it right into whatever you're cooking, and it will cook up in like 2 seconds. So I usually try and make like 2 tablespoon containers of tomato paste out of those cans so that I don't waste anything. If you really don't have any tomato paste, you can always use 3 tablespoons of tomato sauce in place of 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. You may want to just cook that down on the stove first, and that will still give your food a lot of depth of flavor, and it should be a pretty good swap out. I did it the other day and it was no problem at all. Just want to stir this until it's well incorporated and there are no clumps of the tomato paste left. At this point, you want to add in all of your frozen veg. So I have like a whole container here of peas and carrots and green beans. I think the recipe actually just calls for 1 cup of mixed frozen peas and carrots, and I said forget it, we're putting it all in. I don't mind putting like a full mixed vegetable in. If you're like a traditionalist, I get it, like go ahead and just use the peas and carrots, but this is what I had on hand, so I put the whole thing in. You also want to put in 1 cup of beef broth. Now I usually keep beef bouillon on hand because that is so inexpensive. Here is what the filling for the shepherd's pie looks like when it's all finished, and the flavor on this is incredible. In the meantime, you do want to cook up your potatoes. So I know we made those a long time ago, but I just boiled the potatoes in a large pot. I covered them with water and I brought them to a boil, reduced it to a simmer, and then cooked the potatoes until they were fork tender, about 10 or 15 minutes. Drained them and added 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter, about a cup of half and half, a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cracked ground pepper. And you may want to add some Parmesan cheese to this as well. I'm just using a hand masher to mash these up. I know some people use like a hand mixer and that helps a lot. Again, you don't have to do this. The problem with making homemade mashed potatoes and the cost of things is that butter and milk are expensive, and you could definitely swap out the butter for margarine or something less expensive. Maybe put half the butter in, but I mean the butter is like what makes it taste delicious. So that's kind of what's tough about making like your own homemade mashed potatoes. The mashed potatoes are cheap, but adding milk and butter to them really does add, when you could just use like a potato flake and add water, and that's a lot more cost efficient. So just your choice, however you want to do it. I'll tell you, the buttery mashed potatoes are absolutely amazing, but it's still good with a flake mashed potato as well. And so we are just going to add in the filling to a 13 by 9.
Hello guys, I'm making shepherd pie.
So as you can see, Julian has joined me for this portion of the video, and he wanted to get helping with the shepherd's pie. So he's going to help me put the mashed potatoes over the top and just kind of dollop the potatoes all over the pie and try and spread it evenly. Once your potatoes are on the pie, you want to cook this at 400 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. And you may want to put a dish below it to make sure it doesn't bubble over, because when this does come out, it's like super bubbly and amazing. I just feel like a casserole like this is the perfect thing to make the day before and then just stick in the oven on the day of Christmas, especially if you're having a group of people over. You know, you can make a couple of them. You could even make them in some foil containers so it's easy cleanup. And it's just something you can put out nice and warm and everybody can enjoy, but you don't have to stress on the day of. This next one is a ravioli lasagna. This is another really inexpensive way to have basically a lasagna for friends and family without spending a ton of money.
In my case, I am going to be using frozen raviolis that I got for $1 each package, so 2 packages on sale. You can also get those frozen raviolis at the Dollar Tree for $1.25, so they are still a budget pick. You want to start off by browning a pound of ground beef, ground turkey, or even mushrooms if you want to go a vegetarian route. You could also skip this step altogether and go without a protein or vegetable option. I've also opted to cook a chopped onion along with my ground beef, but you could always use onion powder for this as well.
Grab a 13 by 9 pan and your favorite jar of pasta sauce, or the cheapest jar of pasta sauce is absolutely fine too. Whatever you have on hand. You can also make your own. I'll put a simple marinara sauce recipe down below in the description box if you do want to make that. And then we're going to put our raviolis over a little bit of sauce in the bottom of the pan. Now you want to check your raviolis ahead of time. Mine were super frozen and frozen together, so it took a little while. Look at that. It's like a whole hunk. And it took a little while for them to defrost and get separated. So I would recommend checking those if they are stuck together like mine were. Go ahead and leave those out on the counter for a little bit to defrost before you start assembling your lasagna. Place half of your raviolis in a single layer, still frozen or even a little bit defrosted is okay. Then put a quarter to a half a cup of your red sauce over your raviolis. That's your choice on how saucy you like your lasagna. I do like mine a little bit more saucy, so I like to add a little extra if I can. And then put all of your beef or mushroom mixture over that sauce. And then you could also use sausage in this. I forgot to mention that. Sausage is also a great option, especially if you can find that on sale. Then you want to add a second layer of raviolis and just use up the rest of those from the 2 packages. And then you want to add another quarter to half a cup of sauce over the top of those raviolis. I am going to grab a little extra because, like I said, I like mine extra saucy. At this point, you can add shredded mozzarella or do what I'm doing and cover it and put it in the fridge for tomorrow. When you are ready to bake this, bake it at 350 degrees for about 45 minutes and make sure to cover that with some shredded cheese. I just don't like to do it before I put the tin foil on because I could spray the top and make sure it doesn't stick. But for me, it's just easier to put it on when it's time to put in the oven. So this is what it looks like when it comes out. For some reason, my cheese didn't melt really well, and I think it might have been the brand. But either way, it tasted absolutely delicious. This was a fabulous meal. We served it with some Texas toast on the side, and it was a hit for the whole family. And that's really all I care about, cheap and for this one, I'm also sharing another inexpensive form of lasagna, Lasagna Rollups, and I made these actually from Dollar Tree last year for my Dollar Tree Christmas dinner, so you'll find that they're very inexpensive Dollar Tree ingredients in them. Then you want to get started with our actual meal, so I'm just taking my pork sausage and cooking that over medium heat. Just want to get it all crumbled up. I did end up adding a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and oregano. And then in a separate pan, I melted 1 tablespoon of butter over medium-low heat, and this is going to be for our bechamel sauce. While that was melting, I just added about half of my can of sauce to my cooked sausage, and you can drain out the sausage too if it seems like a little too fatty for you. I actually felt that mine was not, so I just added it right in. I thought it was going to add some good flavor, but that's your choice on how you want to do that. And then once your butter is melted, you want to add about 1/8 of a cup of your flour. Whisk that right in, and we're just going to keep whisking it and actually bring it until it becomes smooth and cook frequently until it turns a light golden color. That's going to be about 6 minutes. So we're almost going to like toast this up. You can see the color change right there. And then to that, I'm just going to whisk in 2 cups of milk. And we're going to cook this again until it's bubbly and boiling. And we want to stir it constantly and cook it until it gets thick. And that's going to be about 10 minutes. So it does take a while to kind of thicken up, and you do need to be careful and watch this the whole time. But you're going to be shocked at how amazing it turns out. It really ends up being like this thick, creamy, almost like a macaroni and cheese type sauce or an Alfredo type sauce. And the flavor is really incredible. So once it's bubbly and thick and it almost seems like it's cheesy, and it's crazy because there's no cheese in here, but it almost seems like it's cheesy. You want to add in a pinch of salt and a pinch of nutmeg, and that's really going to give it some good flavor too. And then you just want to set this off to the side as well. You also want to boil the lasagna noodles according to the package instructions and drain those out. Then shred up your mozzarella cheese and assemble the lasagna roll-ups. And I think you could also make like a small lasagna here, but I also kind of think that you get a lot more bang for your buck when making the roll-ups, just because you need like, I feel like a little bit less on the filling, but each one seems like it's more significant. Start with a few tablespoons of the meat sauce down the center of the lasagna noodle, and then top that with some of the bechamel sauce. And then you're just going to roll it up. It's that simple. You kind of feel it out how much you think should be in there without overfilling it. And we're going to end up with about half of the bechamel sauce after making these, which is fantastic. And I did end up making about 6 of these. So that's how much the filling ended up making the actual meat sauce, the amount of pork sausage that we bought.
If you are trying to feed a few more people, I think that you could easily just buy one more pork sausage, a little bit more sauce, and maybe more milk. And we're gonna have plenty of lasagna noodles left over, so that should be fine if you're trying to serve more. And you do wanna roll these pretty loosely because you just don't want like the fillings like coming out the sides at all. You want to make sure that that kind of stays in the center, kind of like a ravioli or something like that. And then we're going to top these with the other half of our red sauce and that shredded mozzarella. And you can actually set this aside right now, or you can get it baking depending on what you're doing. But we're going to make a couple more side dishes and some appetizers. So I just set this off to the side until I was ready to bake it.
Like I said, this was recorded on my Dollar Tree Christmas dinner last year. Every year I do a $20 Christmas dinner from Dollar Tree and try and make it really elegant. So if you want to see the entire dinner beginning to end, I will make sure to link that video down below, as well as the one that I did this year with a chicken parm casserole. That's also a great Christmas option.
Day.
I did. Do you like that? Good, right? Trying a second bite? Are you not going to answer me? You like that garlic bread? Good, Didi?
A Tommy out Tommy. Monster.
A Tommy out of Tommy?
Say something real.
This next recipe is for chicken bacon ranch casserole, and holy moly, it is so good. So you want to start off by cooking up some pasta. I'm using a 10-ounce box of penne, but you could use like rigatoni, macaroni. I would say any noodle with a hole through the middle will be good. I'm also cooking up some bacon because obviously chicken bacon ranch casserole. But if you do not have bacon on hand, it is always okay to use these bacon pieces. I grabbed these at the Dollar Tree, so they are super inexpensive and they are great to keep on hand. I've also heard it's great to keep like a big bag of real bacon bits that you get from like Costco or one of those big box stores. I've never had them myself, but I heard they are a good option and a cheap budget alternative. The good news is if you are using real bacon like this, you only need 4 pieces. So I'm cooking up a little bit more for something else, but using only 4 pieces really cuts the cost down, and then you can use the rest of the package of bacon for a different meal. So it really stretches out something that's actually kind of a more expensive item. Once your pasta is done cooking, I've actually removed the pasta from that pot and using the same pot to make my meal. Over a medium heat, you want to melt in 2 tablespoons of butter. To that, I'm adding 3 cloves of minced garlic, and I'm just going to cook that for even less than a minute, just until fragrant. Now, I was starting to get a little nervous because my butter was already starting to brown, but that's okay. I think if I were to do this again, I might not use the same pot that I used for the pasta that was already hot, but the recipe did recommend to do it, so I tried it, and you know, you'll live, you learn. To that mixture, add 2 tablespoons of ranch seasoning. So I'm just using the Hidden Valley ranch seasoning, and a half a tablespoon of flour. And then you want to mix that all around because we're basically making a roux pretty much out of that ranch dressing mix, and you do get that flavor in this pasta. So totally worth it to do it this way. Once that is well mixed, add in 1 pint of heavy cream, and you just kind of want to whisk this around as you're pouring it in to make sure everything is well incorporated. As you can see, it was getting a little brown. I'm like, what's going on here? Not a problem at all. Like, this did not turn out burnt, and as I added more cream in, it really incorporated just fine. So I don't really know if that's like a normal thing because I was using the ranch mix or not, but if you run into that issue and you're nervous, do not be nervous. Just continue to add that cream in, make sure that everything is well mixed, bring it up to a boil, and then just kind of cook it for about a minute until it thickens. At this point, you want to remove it from the heat and add in about a half a cup of Parmesan cheese. Stir until the cheese completely melts. And then you want to add in your chicken. So I'm using a couple of those chicken breasts that I grilled up the day before and just cutting them into 1-inch cubes. You can definitely use a rotisserie chicken or some canned chicken here. That's a great option. And then add in your cooked pasta. You want to make sure that was cooked al dente. Mix everything together. Then you want to grease a 9 by 13 pan and pour that entire casserole right in there. I'm going to top it with 1 cup of shredded mozzarella and 4 slices of crumbled cooked bacon, or you could use those real bacon bits or the bacon bits from McCormick. That would be totally fine. We're going to pop this in the oven at 375 degrees for 20 minutes. And then I sprinkled mine with a little bit of fresh parsley, and you can see that it actually looks very festive with the red bacon and the green parsley and kind of the white sauce, and served it with a salad. But I think this would look really good on any holiday table, and it would be great for a crowd. And this is another lasagna variation. It's a poor man's lasagna. I feel like these flavors are really great for a crowd.
Now, this uses a penne pasta instead of a lasagna noodle, and I think that that's one of the reasons why it's considered a budget meal. A regular penne or rigatoni will go on sale for down to like 33 cents a box, where lasagna noodles are usually not included in that, so they're usually more expensive. Then I'm gonna brown up a pound of ground beef or ground turkey. Again, if you have ground turkey on hand, or you got it on sale, or you can get it for $2.20 at Walmart, that's a lot cheaper than a ground beef. And this is the perfect recipe to switch that up with, because it's in a casserole anyway, so you can't really taste the flavor difference. As a sub for ricotta in this, you're using 16 ounces of cottage cheese and 8 ounces of softened cream cheese. And then you want to mix that into your cooked penne. Now, unfortunately, I missed getting that on camera because sometimes that happens. It's just real life. You want to layer a 9 by 13 pan with half of this pasta mixture, half of your meat mixture, and half of a 24-ounce can of pasta sauce. You can get pasta sauce for as cheap as 84 cents at Walmart these days, so you can make this pretty inexpensive. I also found that with a regular lasagna, you're using 2 to 3 times that amount of pasta sauce. And in this, you don't need quite as much, and it still turned out really, really good. Then you want to repeat these same 3 steps with the remaining pasta, meat, and sauce, and then top this with 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella. I did take a look at some lasagna recipes to compare in the amount of ingredients and prices, and a lot of lasagna recipes are looking for up to 2 pounds of mozzarella, 2 pounds of ground beef or sausage, 2 to 3 jars of marinara sauce. So I felt like, yes, it's less, there's less going on here, but I felt like to fill the same area, we spent a lot less money and there were just a lot less ingredients. You do want to bake this at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. This is also a great make ahead or freeze ahead meal. It is super easy to just make and pop in your refrigerator and then pop it in the oven later.
For this one, I'm sharing a salmon recipe for you fish lovers out there. I don't share fish a lot, but I think salmon would be wonderful on Christmas Day. So we're just going to start off by slicing up about a teaspoon of fresh rosemary. I'm sure you could use dried if you have it, but in this recipe, I really would recommend getting fresh if you can. It's super easy to grow herbs or buy herbs that you can actually grow in your kitchen. So think about doing that. I've always also had an arrow garden. So as always, I will post that down in my description box if you're interested in growing one of those yourself. So you just want to slice this up into a small mince basically, then transfer that to a small bowl or measuring cup like I'm doing. And here I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Again, you want to try and use a better olive oil in this case, but if you don't have it, go ahead and use a canola oil. And then 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. I had the pre-cut stuff, but I'm sure fresh would give you even more flavor. You can see how thick this sauce is. Like, it's so full of flavor and delicious just with the garlic and the rosemary. Then the recipe calls for 1 1/4 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes. I kind of eyeballed this and said that 4 looked like a decent amount for us, and it was the perfect amount for 4 people for the meal, and it fit on the pan very well. So you just want to slice these up into, I would say, a medium dice. We want these to be kind of like almost like a home fry. That way they will cook perfectly on the sheet pan in the right amount of time. You don't want to cut them too small or else they'll cook too fast. And if you cut them too big, it would take too long and you would end up overcooking the rest. The important thing when you're cooking like a sheet pan meal is that everything cooks at the right speed and temperature so that you're not overcooking or undercooking something different. Once your potatoes are diced, you're going to want to add 1 tablespoon of the oil, rosemary, and garlic mixture. And then I'm going to mix that around, make sure that everything is fully covered, and add about a teaspoon of salt as well as pepper. I'll spread these out evenly on a large rimmed baking sheet, and you're going to bake these at 425 degrees for 20 minutes. While the potatoes are getting started, I'm going to start trimming the asparagus. I'm just going to cut the ends off of the asparagus because that's like a really crunchy part and you really don't want to eat that. I mean, I think some people do, but I'm not into it. So I just cut those off and set them aside. They're great for using for like a vegetable stock or even in like a juice or something, but not necessarily good for this dish. So I'm cutting the asparagus into thirds, and I'm actually going to place this into the same bowl that I used for the potatoes. That way I can save on dishes. And I'm going to add another tablespoon of the oil mixture to the asparagus and mix thoroughly to get fully covered. I'm also going to add some salt and pepper to this too. It says 1/4 teaspoon, but I think I just sprinkled on what I had. Now, what's a salmon dish without lemon? So I'm just slicing my lemon into rounds and getting that started as well. Now the recipe calls for about 20 ounces of salmon, which is probably about what I have. I think it asked for fillets, but this is how mine was cut and it worked out perfectly. So I'm just taking the rest of the oil mixture and spreading that over the top of the salmon. Oh, that is like so delicious together. The rosemary, garlic, oil. Really, I've been using that mixture on everything since I started making this recipe. I'm really into it. I've made the potatoes multiple times since, and I'm like, what's better than rosemary, garlic, and oil, really? And then I'm going to make a sauce that we're going to put over the salmon when we're partway cooked. So it calls for 2 tablespoons of balsamic glaze, which I have here. And that's, I think, Pastine brand. And then it adds 1 tablespoon of, it says grainy mustard, which I did not have. So I used some Dijon, and it ended up tasting delicious. You can see I took a little piece here, and my son Julian wanted to try it. And he thought, wow, that was delicious. He really, really liked it. So it was a great way to get him kind of encouraged to eat the meal. You can see everything is ready here. And once my potatoes come out after the 20-minute mark, we're going to put everything on the sheet pan and start roasting it up with those potatoes. It's kind of cool because you get to put the potatoes in the oven first. They get that first set of cooking, and then you get to add everything else, and that way everything cooks at the right temperature. You can see how the potatoes are cooking for the first half, and they're looking really, really good. So we're actually going to move these over to the side of the pan and then add only the asparagus to start. And I'm going to cook the asparagus for about 3 minutes in the oven, and that's just going to give it a nice green look and get it started. And then we're going to add our salmon after that. So it went in, the asparagus has now come out, and we're going to move everything off to the side even more, which is fine at this point because everything's gotten kind of a good cook, so it doesn't need to be spread out as much, even though it seems like there's kind of like piles. It worked out just fine. So you just want to put the salmon in the center of the pan, and then we're going to lay the lemon across all the vegetables and the salmon and cook that for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I'm going to take the lemons kind of off the top of the salmon and then brush the salmon with 1 teaspoon of the balsamic and mustard glaze. Just putting this over. So we're going to cook this for another 5 minutes at this point until the vegetables are tender and the salmon is just cooked through. And here's the finished product. This was so amazing and delicious. The whole family raved about it, and I just love that it's really healthy too. So if you're looking for that lighter option for your holiday meal, this is definitely going to be it. And for my last option, I'm not actually offering dinner at all. I'm actually recommending that you may not want to go with dinner. Brunch is an amazing option on Christmas or for any holiday party. And I have some amazing casserole and make-ahead recipes in the video that is up next on the screen. So I hope you enjoy it.